Welcome to the Leading Ladies podcast with international leadership coach, speaker, author, trainer, and your host, Fiona Mackay. The Leading Ladies podcast shares stories and advice from women around the world who have successfully navigated the glass ceiling. You'll gain powerful insights into strategies for cracking the glass ceiling, embracing your self-worth and value, and advocating for yourself and others. So please join Fiona for frank, courageous, and heartfelt conversations designed to take you on a journey to new levels of personal and professional success.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Leading Ladies of Aerospace. Today, I am really excited to introduce to you Emily Whitman, President and CEO of Aerospace Futures Alliance. Emily has been described by her industry peers as an experienced coalition builder and economic engine. My experience of Emily is that she's a powerhouse of integrity and thoughtfulness, and she's been a real supporter to me, and I really appreciated her friendship as a peer in the industry. Prior to her current role, she has worked for Senator Maria Cantwell, the Puget Sound Regional Council, and Greater Seattle Partners. I decided to call Emily's session today Top 30 Under 30. Emily is a young female leader and a fabulous one at that. And so today she's going to talk to us about thriving as a young leader in aerospace. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Fiona. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you.
So, is there anything that you want to share with our audience, Emily, that I didn't say in your introduction?
Yeah, I suppose going in the Wayback Machine, just mentioning that I am a Washingtonian born and raised. So I grew up in Maple Valley, which is most famously known as being the city next to Kent and Covington. When I try to tell people exactly where it is, about 45 minutes south of Seattle. I went to the University of Washington and then promptly moved to Seattle. So I am a hometown girl, essentially. I never quite got away from our beautiful state, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, and I'm also glad to see that you don't seem to be part of the Seattle freeze. For our listeners out of state, when you move to Seattle, there's a phenomenon known as the Seattle freeze to outsiders, with the locals not being too friendly. But I have to say, Emily is most friendly.
Thank you, Fiona. I think we're still trying to get a touch of that Southern hospitality. We don't quite hug at this day and age, but hugging with your eyes or smiling with your eyes is definitely something I was taught.
Yeah, some fist bumps or elbow bumps during COVID.
Exactly.
So Emily, I'm so glad that you are here with us today. One of the things that I've always been observing with you is just how different you look to some of the people around you in aerospace. Mm-hmm. And how you're fearless in the face of that. So if you're okay with it, could we start today by talking about what your experience has been since transitioning into your current role?
Yeah, so I think my LinkedIn page technically puts me at 11 months now, maybe 10, working on 10, 11 months in this job. It both feels like 10 years and 10 days. Right at the beginning, I mean, there's a real difference between my experience in 2019 and in 2020, not just because we're moving to a virtual platform and we're not able to physically see one another, but I had the summit back in October. I had to plan that and execute it within 6 weeks. And that was really a debut, much more than any press release or article was, but a debut for people to see my quality of work and the way that I like to structure conversations and bring people together and build community.
A very public debut, may I add. The summit is attended by hundreds of local aerospace companies. So what a way to be introduced to the community.
Absolutely. And there are so many aerospace companies, right? I think we have more than 600, direct aerospace employers and 1,400 plus suppliers. And so, while I had been involved in aerospace business recruitment and economic development in the past, I hadn't had that handshake or put a face to the name with every single one of them. So I was meeting or cold calling quite a few of our aerospace partners saying, hey, are you involved in our summit? And by the way, I'm the new CEO and I will see you there. So I would say it was a great experience. It's definitely been interesting to see who has reached out and become part of that inner circle of support now that we all transitioned to resilience and recovery during this post-COVID, hopefully post-COVID time. You know, the folks who have reached out to partner and become collaborative with AFA has been really rewarding in what we're able to do with our mutual members and for our constituency in Washington.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, as we're looking today at sharing experiences as a young leader, what kind of obstacles have you faced in your early days in the role?
Time. I will say, even in interviewing for this job, the other candidates, just by the nature of things, were, you know, decades sometimes into their career, and they have to do an, you know, resume update and take a couple pages off every time. And, you know, my resume firmly fits, you know, on one page, at least up until this point. And I've had great experiences and done quite a bit in those different job opportunities, but still, I just didn't have as much time under my belt as other applicants and other folks in that talent pool. And that has been the biggest obstacle, is proving that I'm a quick learner, and when I don't know something, I admit it and I bring in or try to find the expert, both in a qualitative and in a quantitative way. There are so many great leaders we've had in our community who have either retired from those positions and have that expertise, or who are actively challenged by the same issues of, you know, running a board or running a nonprofit during this time, that I can lean on and learn from. And you've been a great asset in being able to ask questions of, hey, you know, I feel like I'm trying to, bivouac through the brush here and try to figure out a new path. And I think you've probably already done this, so give me the tips. So that has been, you know, the blessing in all of this. But the biggest obstacle is definitely, you know, man, I haven't seen her around for 10 plus years. Therefore, what is her, what is she bringing to the table?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. And to our audience, that wasn't planned. I used to do a role similar to Emily, so I've proactively wanted to support Emily, and that support has gone both ways. So there's definitely a mutual respect there. And I have to say, when I first met you, I was like, oh wow, she's from outside of aerospace. She's younger. What does she have to offer? And I suspect or assume that I'm probably not the only one. I suspect that you've had both males and females think about, you know, what does she bring? And so, how do you approach people when you sense that initial at first?
Yeah, I try to, first, I falsely think I'm very, very funny. And so I try to break the ice early and acknowledge. I didn't break the window behind you, just break the ice in conversation. But
Yep.
I try to acknowledge it early and bring myself in on the joke, almost, in a way. So, for example, I joke that I don't have a technical background in aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, systems engineering. I joke that the only science I know is political, but that's also my job, and that's the team member that I can play within this. You know the technical side, and you know how to build the airplane and build the rocket and build the component and design, you know, the next best thing. I'm the one who gets to translate that for you into reminding our community why it's important that we continue to foster and support aerospace companies and business and inspire that next generation of talent. So I think once I assert that that's my role and how it is very valuable, they understood it. You didn't necessarily have to come up, starting as a, CNC programmer in order to be able to talk to our legislators about issues that are important. I love to push those people in front of legislators before me, but I'm the person who is able to facilitate that conversation and make sure that we build that community, especially as we're advocating for our companies and our communities in that way.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm hearing that humility and humor is a big part of your approach to business. And I think that now is a moment for a quick segue into an example for that, which is rather embarrassing for me. So early on, when I was getting to know Emily, we were actually at an event, and she came over and I was introducing her to a colleague of mine, and I happened to be eating at the buffet at that point in time. And managed to send a particle of food in Emily's direction. I was super embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I have just spat food at the president and CEO of AFA. What is she going to think of me? And I remember you just laughed and you put me at ease. And
I probably said something like, if it wasn't going to be you, it was going to be me.
yeah, and it just made me feel like, you know, I'm comfortable around this amazing woman. So I think that humor is definitely a huge skill of yours. And in my own experience, I was a manager at 27 and director at 29. And sometimes it can be really hard when you're out there and you are different. You know, it's very easy to you know, have a chip on your shoulder that's weighing you down and be like, you know, the odds are against me. But I find that, you know, bringing in humor and you know, just understanding human nature can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think it's also balanced with showing your cards and really showing that you know, proving yourself in very quick but you know, important and meaningful ways. And what I mean by that is, whenever I walked into a room, especially early in my career when I was 22, 23, working as a full-time staffer for a United States senator, I was in her Seattle office, and I would take meetings with constituent groups. I did her federal grant funding, so very similar to the work we're doing right now, advocating for communities for, you know, economic recovery. I used to do competitive grant funding for the senator. So a community would have a great idea for a job program, or I was very into freight and movement of products, which is definitely part of my aerospace knowledge and my first introduction to aerospace. And so I would work with communities, but they would come in and they would assume either that I, you know, was the front desk assistant, which I was for a year and a half, and it was boot camp. I was on the front lines listening to every issue provided by our constituents who had a meaningful and passionate reason for calling, even if I didn't personally agree with it. So you just got very good at connecting with people very quickly. But they would either assume that I was the front desk assistant, which says more about them than it does about me, or they would assume I was the intern. And so their demeanor towards me completely changed when they learned that I was actually the person taking the meeting on behalf of the senator, rather than the person escorting them back and getting them a glass of water, which are important roles to play, but again, more said about them. So in those conversations, to put them at ease, yes, humor, but also showing that I had a really firm grasp of what we were talking about, and being able to dive past platitudes and generalities and into the weeds of an issue, so we're actually able to talk specifics and then come out of it with a set plan. I wouldn't say I was able to help everyone all the time, but at least you were able to place the next puzzle piece down for them, or you were able to run with it and come up with a plan together. But really studying and taking the time to do research and understand exactly what you think your opinion or think your perspective on the issue at hand is, and then inviting them into that conversation and getting deep enough in the weeds that you can change your perspective or learn more, add to your understanding of it, and be able to help them or have them help you a little bit more.
So very much a learning mindset bringing to each and every conversation.
Yeah. And sometimes you throw down that card and they go, oh, you know, I'm surprised that, you know, that's a niche issue that I'm really passionate about, but now we can really talk about it because we're taking it down from the 30,000 level, where I'm explaining to you the basics of this issue that this person's been studying or working on for their whole career. And now you can find exactly how you can partner together, not solve the whole problem for them, not solve the entire puzzle for them, which I think as women in particular, we take on because we like to be helpers and see a quality product produced. And it's hard sometimes to add to the product and then, you know, wish it off and hope that it flies there at the end to see it really blossom in completion. So
Fantastic. So I love what you said about not always taking on the burden of solving for others. What tips would you give to women out there that have a tendency to, you know, want to caretake other people and make sure that everybody's challenges are addressed?
I got to quote the great Brene Brown. I don't think you can have a conversation about what it's like to be a female, leader or not, without somehow bringing up Brene Brown. But she talks about the marble jar and the anatomy of trust. And I think that we give so much of our time and energy and passion that we want to help and run with an entire project and be a partner, but we end up giving far more than we are getting, and the energy dedicated is imbalanced. And so I think an easy first step is to give them a test, give them a task at the outset. And if they return on that task and they, provide the quality and the work or help, most of it is just if they took the time to do it and return it in a timely manner, then you can consider really putting in 100% of your energy, knowing that this is something you can really collaborate on, rather than, oh, you've come to me with this great idea, I really want to run with it, and now I'm the one running with it, and you're looking back saying, oh yeah, I gave her that idea.
Yeah. And I really love what you're saying, because what I'm hearing is when somebody brings a challenge to you, it's okay, how can we solve this as a partner, rather than how can I solve this for you? It's not being the hero, it's being the collaborator, being the partner. And I think I absolutely love what you said about the little test, how much commitment are other people bringing to the table. I know that I could certainly take a lot from that.
I'd like to take a moment to pause and recognize GM Defense, our sponsor that helps make this podcast possible. GM Defense is driving the future of military mobility by leveraging the best-in-class capabilities of General Motors for unmatched innovation, proven performance, and breakthrough lifecycle economics. Learn more at www.gmdefensellc.com. And watch out for new job posts as they expand and strengthen their team. You can also follow them on Twitter and LinkedIn. The GM Defense team is amazing, and we are proud that they sponsor the Leading Ladies of podcast. And back to today's guest.
And I love that you made the transition in the conversation there to energy, because so far in this conversation, we've talked about how you do deal with some of that negativity or judgment that you might come across. But at the end of the day, you're human, and I imagine sometimes, if you're having a rough day and there's a lot of people that had come along and judged you or treated you a certain way, it can weigh heavy on the heart. At least it does on mine. And so, what are some of your tips for how you refill your cup when you experience that?
Give yourself a break.
Mm-hmm.
I think and it's probably Brene Brown, or I'm sure it's said a million times, it's on a million posters, like, treat your inner monologue should treat you in the same way that you treat your friends, right? If you wouldn't give that encouragement or say that to your best friend, then you shouldn't be repeating it to yourself, over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that as somebody who naturally deals with anxiety, I'm probably doing about 20% better than I'm giving myself credit for doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might be, 20% better anyways, then, my worst is maybe better than someone else's best, given just, again, the passion and the energy that you have to the task at hand, and vice versa. Don't feel like you have to be completely passionate and dedicated and in love with every single task that you do. Sometimes a task is just a task, and you just got to get it done.
Just giving yourself permission not to be perfect, giving yourself some permission to just let it go and not hold on to it.
Yeah, and just evaluate what gets assigned as needing to be perfect, right? If it's something that needs to be perfect, make it perfect.
Yeah.
But not everything in your day is going to merit the perfect. And then I try to find the little joys in life. It's kind of funny. I used to get such a kick. I would have a conversation with someone on the phone, and the person who worked next to me always joked, they're like, you have chances when you're off the phone. It's either, oh, they were so nice, it was so great, or it's like, okay, like it's very like, all right, like that was a waste of time, and it's Yeah, so I find the little joys in the day. Like if that was a lovely conversation, just sit in that and externalize, like that was really lovely. And today I would say it has just felt frustrating and sluggish for some reason. And the joy today was I looked through I did a cursory glance at most of the resumes that came in for our job fair tomorrow. And I was trying to, part of needing to know or having needing to be established and value add in a conversation in my meetings is doing a lot of data crunching and research so I understand the narrative. And I was pulling out everybody's master's degree, subject, essentially just trying to look at it. And I was looking at it and I went, oh my gosh, we have so many brilliant, talented, interesting people in our state. And how lucky are we that we have these people in our community? So that was today's little joy.
Oh, beautiful. And for those of you listening from out of state, Emily is actually arranged a job fair for tomorrow in the midst of COVID. Just recognizing that we have some great talent in this state and connecting some of our local talent to the great companies that are actually still hiring right now. So hats off to Emily for that.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort talking about folks who are collaborating and reached out. I've been really impressed not only with Erin on our team, obviously, who has just been the one really driving this event, and she's done great, but also partnerships with the Employment Security Department, who receive federal money to do similar types of events. So I think we're the first test case for aerospace, but they're looking to do them for every industry as well.
And I can't wait to see what you guys produce. So Emily, you know that on this show we love to talk about people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a story to share with us where you've faced some hurdle with that unnamed individual, based on your gender or your age, and like a story from struggle to success that you would be okay to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I can't dismiss the real experience, as a straight white woman. I definitely have a lot of privilege, especially with the first two designations. But as a woman, I definitely have personal experiences in sexist or just overtly inappropriate, behavior. And I never thought, oh, it would happen to me, especially in this type of professional context, but it happens all the time. And I think we talked once about how do you, in fact, it was a discussion, do you want the blatant, aggressions, or do you want like the quiet microaggressions? And
Yeah.
um, obviously the blatant ones, because you can call them out and recognize them, but that takes a lot of strength to do.
Yeah.
Well, say I've always had that strength, but I think too, what because I'm here more as a young woman than a woman alone, the biggest frustration for me is when I lost a job opportunity simply because that person had more time on their resume and was a partner within the community, and people knew that individual and had experiences with them. And while I didn't have as much time on my resume, the work that I had done and the way that I collaborated with people and led teams was very value add and produced results that others, weren't either taking the risk to do or just weren't passionate about doing, didn't feel like it was their job. And it wasn't my job either. I One of my you called me fearless earlier, and I have to give credit. The first person who ever called me fearless actually was Josh Brown, the executive director over at Puget Sound Regional Council. When I was leaving, he was like, yeah, they need someone over there who's, fearless. And I was like, I didn't think that I was fearless in this context, but,
Oh, you're fearless, buddy.
well, thank you. I will take the compliment. Thank you. In that work environment, I wouldn't categorize anything, especially as fearless. I think there's definitely, you've witnessed probably more of that, but since I left. But I was at a meeting with the New Mid-Market Airplane Council back when it was first called together. I remember it was down at the it was at the Gordon Thomas Honeywell offices down in Tacoma, and it was hosted by Economic Development, the EDB, Tacoma Pierce County, and big room of people, kind of your typical players. I think that coalition was 40 organizations, which is huge. And they were kind of going around the room talking about their ideas. And I remember at the time, Brian Bondlander, who was the then director of the Department of Commerce, like he was taking notes, and Chris Green, his, deputy, was taking notes. And I was like, it's great. You want to see leaders taking notes, but it's also clear that there's no staff, on the other end coordinating the whole conversation. I mean, it was, I think Chris Green had printed up the agendas, and I'm not, sexing any of the type of task. It was more that as a young professional, I thought, oh my gosh, here's the Department of Commerce director, very, very almost in the weeds, really working on things. But clearly, they needed help. And I saw, the way I categorized it was, I saw a lot of captains and no crew.
Yeah.
So when you have a lot of captains and no crew, you need someone to be able to, do a lot of the work. I'm trying not to say that pilots don't do work, but you need a cabin crew in order to fly that plane, and they do a lot of important, right? So I wrote up a project timeline and a project template, essentially, and walked into the office on a lark and said, I think this is what the organization can do over the next, 3 to 6 months. Back then, we were anticipating Boeing to build the new mid-market airplane, within 2017-18. Obviously, that hasn't happened, but we were able to do a lot of great work, especially on workforce development issues, and we toured the whole state, and that was all predicated on the fact that I took the risk of putting together an idea, and they saw value in it. And then we were able to collaborate, on that over time. And it was after that I was passed over for someone who just had more time on their resume, when I felt like I had been filling that role.
Yeah.
And I was pretty explicitly told that the difference was, at least on paper, that I just didn't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
And working with humor, I was like, man, I actually said this to my hiring committee when I was interviewing for this job with AFA. I said, the elephant in the room is that I'm young, and I get that. But what comes with that is energy and a lot of ideas, and the ability to pivot, and also not having any predisposed, judgments over, this supplier or that, or this plane or that plane, or, I didn't have a VTOL OEM picked out that was my, favorite based on some business relationship. And the elephant in the room really is that I'm young, and, but I promise you, every day I wake up and I'm just trying to get older for you. Every day I wake up and I'm trying to get a little bit older. So day by day, I'm working on that for you. And they laughed.
Yeah.
And, that's all you can do is just.
Yeah. And what I love about that is that you took the experience in not getting a job, and you used it to help you get your next job. And what I'm hearing is, number one, call it out. And number two, be brave.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, show them what you can do.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got subconscious bias, and there are many examples where you do need a certain amount of experience to do a certain role. But when it comes to leadership, some of the strongest leaders I've seen have actually been younger than me. So I really appreciate your ability to be bold in challenging those stereotypes, because I think that with the great team between yourself and then the experienced team that are on the AFA board, I think you could create some magic together. I saw the same thing at Rolls-Royce. They, in their sales and marketing teams, they put a lot of work into creating diversity in their teams. And so you would have these experienced people with people under 30, and they would just create these super dynamic teams. And I think that openness is what really sets some companies apart. Emily, I just want to be conscious of your time, and I'm also really conscious that this podcast is about breaking the glass ceiling, and I can't believe I have got to 5-10 minutes from the end and I've still not asked you a question about the glass ceiling. So Emily, In your experience, does the glass ceiling, be it in aerospace, politics, wherever, does the glass ceiling still exist?
Oh, absolutely.
How does it show up for you?
I think that's the tough thing about the glass ceiling is that it's clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you don't know it's there until you run into it and you
Yeah.
hit it. So, and sometimes if you hit it hard enough and in the best way, it cracks on its own and you're like, oh, I got through that one. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, there's almost something on the other end of this, which is, yes, I'm the president and CEO of this organization, and that might sound, it almost feels like we're in a glass house almost, or we're in an ivory tower, or whatever type of, pick a material and pick a structure in this metaphor. But it's like, email me, call me. I once had someone say recently, like, man, you're really hard to get a hold of. And I was like, first of all, I know 4 people in your office that have my phone number that you could turn to. My email is always on the bottom of all of our newsletter emails. There's a telephone number on our website. I LinkedIn message me. I'm vastly able, to be gotten a hold of, and I really want to collaborate. And I think, I will naturally try to run with and solve a whole problem, but I'm also very happy to try to partner and work on a piece of your issue and be the first to admit where I can't take it, 100%, where I'm only going to be a conversation that maybe broadened your thinking about something. But um, I'm so excited to collaborate on others. And I think by exposing yourself and exposing me to your organization and those partnerships, you start to decrease the likelihood of hitting a glass ceiling, because then you start to have your community vouching for yourself, so that by the time you walk into a room, something that may have been an obstacle as a complete unknown, is no longer an obstacle for you.
Love that image there. So first of all, I have this image of you just splat into a glass ceiling. And
Both and figuratively.
yeah, and then I have this image of you collaborating with people and it being like the sliding doors letting you through.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Again,
Yeah.
having your establishment aerospace industry partners be validators for you is
Mhm.
is really important. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I don't operate within a network and a context. It's just, I think you said earlier, building partnerships based on humility and being value add. And I try to be honest when I have to say no about doing something together, and that's just because I know I don't have the like sometimes literal emotional energy to make that happen. And then also the balance of, is it a priority for the organization? And we are still very much in this time of churn, and that makes me very uncomfortable because I like to have processes and plans figured out, and there's a timeline and we stick to it. And it's like, okay, great, I've got my timeline, like the project timeline is on paper, and then it's
Yeah.
like so pretty, and then you're like, and here's COVID, and like, or like, here's recession, or you pull it back in because now job opportunities that you're trying to connect people to. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, you never know where those curveballs are coming from, be they related to the glass ceiling or other things.
yeah.
So, Emily, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody graduating from college right now, wanting to enter the workforce? What's one piece of advice you would give them for taking on the glass ceiling?
I can't think of a terribly tactful way to say it, but you might not know everything, but neither does everyone else, whether that is the CEO on down of your organization. Be fearless and you can take those risks as long as they're within an appropriate context. But be fearless and take risks, and don't be afraid of going for it, because there's that necessary initiative is more rare than you think. You might be a bigger asset, and your talent is a bigger asset than you even know, just because on the other end of it, it's really easy to pick out like who the outstanding intern is, and it's not based on what was on their resume. It was based how they were as a teammate or as a person, and how they collaborated. For me personally, it's the initiative that someone takes. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't ask you to do this, but you did it, and you did it really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Didn't do it perfectly, because for me, nobody can do something the way I would do it, because only I would. I changed my mind on how I would do it 3 different times before I did it. So, yeah, I would say be fearless, take initiative, and then just have that humility and go, I don't know this, and they'll go, I don't know it either, and they can figure it
Yeah, and
out.
I love the spin that you put on that. You know, even the CEO doesn't know everything. I think so many people are intimidated by people in positions of power, and they're just human beings. And I see you interacting with leaders all the time, and I think that is a hurdle block for men and women. It doesn't matter who you are in the organization; everyone's a human being, and quite often it's lonely at the top, and they actually appreciate being treated like a human being. So glad to see you've
Perception, yeah, that they are untouchable, and
yeah.
I can't, like, I guarantee that they have not been. They've rarely received an email from a new hire saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm the new hire in,
Can
on
I
the
buy you coffee?
grab coffee. Like, can we set up half an hour? I just want to, like, introduce myself and get to know you, and then make those really human questions. Like, have 2 human questions of, what have been your biggest frustrations? Like, if you could look back and give me, advice, like, what would you wish that you knew starting out in this? And sometimes, like, oh, I didn't need to go to grad school, or
Yeah.
should have had a better work-life balance. And then they know, yeah.
Well, Emily, I wish we had more time. I could sit here and talk to you for hours. It has been a real pleasure to get to know you a little better today. I mean, I already know you pretty well, but now I've got some more juice and I'm loving it, and I'm sure our audience will too. And so for our audience that is listening, make sure that you go to MackayUnlimited.com and check out the podcast. We'll have show notes. So some of the things that Emily's talked about today with Aerospace Futures Alliance and Brene Brown, that's all going to be mentioned in the show notes. So you'll be able to find links to those books and those resources, and take some time to get to know Emily a little better yourself. So thank you, Emily. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks everyone for listening. LinkedIn message me, email me. I'd love to get to know you as well in the post-COVID world.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you now have additional tools and insights for creating your own cracks in the glass ceiling. If you think this will inspire and help others, please share this episode on your social media and leave your comments on MackayUnlimited.com/podcasts. For more tips and support as you embrace your journey through the glass ceiling, please join our community Facebook group at leadingladiesofFB.com.